this video, we're going to talk about my birth story. So my experience as a certified nurse midwife, as a family nurse practitioner, as an acute care labor and delivery travel nurse. So everything I know and what happened to my birth story, what the whole heck happened. Ideally, that would be sips tea, but sips orange juice. Bonjour, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are wondering, if you are, I am about 7 weeks postpartum, so I am back. This video is imperfect because I'm imperfect, and so I just wanted to share my experience because I'm sure my story will help someone else. Listen until the end because that's where I actually share the birth story and the experience, and I don't leave anything out. But in the beginning, I kind of want to talk through my whole thought process, my reflection, because it's a lot to process. I mean, hormonally and then mind, body, spirit. So many aspects you have to consider, and you have to consider the healing for before, during, and post birth. Initially, I was going to call this video and I was going to say, sorry, the sun's right behind me, so I'm not sure how that's impacting my light, but hopefully you can hear me because that's most important. So initially I was going to call this video Practice What You Preach and call it church and say this is my testimony, but I'll just call it my birth story and my birth experience. So here's what it is, and we're going to go again step by step. I'm going to take you through my thought process, take you through what it meant to me, and take you through everything. So just bear with me until the end. We have a lot to cover this whole series because I'm taking my years of experience as a practitioner, as a labor and delivery nurse. I was a travel labor and delivery nurse, so I've been around. And so I'm taking all that. Plus now, in addition to that, I'm going to share my personal experience. So I am going to be sharing firsthand what you can do to have a more desirable pregnancy, things you can do to thrive in postpartum, so many things that I've done. And we're definitely to cover women's health as well, but I want to cover maternity, so maternal child initially, so that we can kind of get that out of the way so you can hear what I did, and so hopefully it can help someone else out there. This video is not going to be about some of the treatments and modalities I used in pregnancy. We'll save that for another video. So how to thrive in pregnancy, how to prevent morning sickness, skincare in pregnancy, what's safe for pregnancy, so many different things. Heartburn, how to thrive with all those things. And again, firsthand what I've done, a lot of natural methods. You know, if you know this channel, you know that we connect the mind, body, spirit in every video. Check out my other videos. So we're not going to do anything different here. So that's going to be it. So let's get to it. Just in case you're wondering, I had a very seamless pregnancy. It was pretty beautiful, actually. So I'm really grateful. And again, I can share firsthand what I did, some of the treatments I've used, acupuncture, chiropractor, what I used them for, some of the benefits, some research behind it. And then that'll be another video to cover. But just in case you're wondering, we had an amazing pregnancy. No morning sickness. I had no swelling. I had no heartburn. I literally had an excellent, amazing pregnancy. And once I gave birth, even though the birth story was really wild, and you kind of want to hear the whole thing, but even though the birth story was really wild, I still, once I gave birth, I was like, so when are we going to have the next one? So they say you have amnesia at the end, and I believe that to be true now. This is very informal. This is like a chat, girls chat. And again, we're sipping orange juice. Not tea. First, I want to start with what I learned, because it's so important. Because again, I had to do like at least 2 weeks of reflecting and kind of processing the birth, processing my experience, processing being a new mom. So processing all those things. So what I learned first was that, and this is going to impact somebody else too, so this is important to hear me, and then you can hear my birth story at the end. But this is important when you're trying to create anything, when you're co-creating anything. So any of your desires, there's nothing you can't be, do, or have, right? We know that. But when you're creating and co-creating, it's imperative. So whenever you put your desire out there, you tell God, His universe, you say, hey, this is what I want, this is what I don't want. And so you align with that desire. So you kind of, of course, you become worthy first of the desire. So you have to convince yourself that you're worthy of it, what you want. And then you have to put it out there. So kind of make it plain, right? It says write down the vision, make it plain. So write it down. I always write down my goals. And then we'll talk about birth intention versus birth plan, because there's a huge segment of flexibility and fluidity that goes along with the birthing process. So, and that can actually impact your birth and impact the whole labor curve. So you are going to want to have that. You're going to want to put out what you're wanting, your desire. Then you have to actually let it go. So we'll talk about that again. So these are the principles we're talking about. And again, we're going to cover this first, and then we'll talk about my birth experience. Welcome back to my channel. Nothing I've ever written down didn't come true for me. So I always make it plain. And I'm very specific. And then I definitely ensure that I'm worthy of it. So whatever I have to do, if you have to do fear releasing, if you have to do deconditioning, you have to release the idea of unworthiness, whatever it is, you have to address that first, because you can't have anything that you don't believe you deserve. So that's number one. Okay, so I make it plain, write it down, and then you have to let it go. So once you put it out there, once you ask God, you have to let it go. So what I did wrong, okay, my birth experience, what I did wrong, because I did everything right, right? So we'll talk about everything I did, and in another video, I'll talk about the hypnobirthing, the chiropractic acupuncture, you name it, all the different treatment modalities, all the classes I took, spinning babies, all the exercises, using my app, everything I did all the right things. So we'll talk about some of those things in another video. How to thrive during labor, how to thrive during birth, how to thrive during postpartum. And we'll cover all that, I promise. Into the art of letting go. So that's really important. And that's what I did wrong. So there's this theory that there's something called nurse's curse, or not only nurse's curse, but also like provider's curse, or you name it. So if you work in the hospital setting, you understand that statement. And it's just saying that there's a curse whenever you're the patient. Something's gonna go wrong. That's what they say. And so I started to believe the nurse's curse, because anything that could have gone wrong did go wrong. And again, I'll tell you why I did wrong, because usually my days are intentional, and most of the time my days go as planned. So the art of letting go. So you have to let it go. So that's relinquishing the control aspect of things. So, and then we talked about that nurse's curse, or that provider curse. And I believe, if I can speak on it, it's just my theory, the reason why there's a nurse's curse or provider's curse is because we know too much to let go. And so to let go and let flow, right? So, and that's the key to co-creating. That's the key to getting your desires, is you have to let it go. You have to allow God to do what he does best, right? That's where the magic happens. Okay, what they call miracles. That's when miracles happen, where his thoughts are higher than our thoughts, ways are higher than our ways. So you can't fathom the execution. I was just talking about this the other day with one of my dolls. So you can't fathom the execution of the how. So you can't try to figure it out. The ego wants to know, how is it going to happen? And because you have all this information, you're that pride, the ego knows too much. And so I think my theory is, for the healthcare providers, or you name it, is you know too much to relinquish control when you're the actual patient. So so you can't just be at rest with the unknown, and the unknown is where the magic happens, because again, your ways are not as high, your thoughts aren't as high as they can be, or you know what I mean. So the thought process is not. So just think about the intelligence level, where you know what I mean. So that's what my theory is, and I have to agree with it, because that's what I think happened with me, is that I did not let go of the process. I didn't trust the process. And in pregnancy, during birth, and in postpartum, and motherhood, right? Because there's going to be so much unknown. You can't control all aspects. So you have to relinquish that control. You have to go into the unknown, where the magic happens. And that's what I did wrong. Okay, so that's what I want to share first. And then again, I promise to get to the story. I mean, that's why you're here. What did the midwife do wrong? And she knew everything to do, and what happened, what went wrong. a time, so just to kind of support what I just said, I can remember a time where there was a patient I was caring for in Miami. I'm not sure if I was traveling or if I was on a permanent assignment because I'm from Miami, as you know. But there was a patient that had some psychiatric history, and I can't remember exactly which ones, but there was like multifactorial. There was a lot of different ones, and then some social issues going on, etc. But she was pregnant. She was like a frequent flyer, always coming in, getting admitted to the hospital, labor and delivery for a different concern. But she was always like withdrawn, very aloof, not really in tune with the pregnancy, with the baby, like didn't realize there was a heartbeat additional to hers. Not kidding. That's how aloof and, you know, withdrawn she was from the whole process of pregnancy. And my heart went out to her, but she literally gave birth. I don't even believe she was in any pain. Apparently, they saw her giving birth in like the middle of the street somewhere. We got her after she was admitted to the hospital after, for like the recovery part of it to make sure she was stable, etc. But she delivered as she was walking on the side of the street, and they found the placenta, so they were able to trace the blood to the baby where the baby was dropped off. Okay, so she had no complications there, and she was able to just squat and give birth. And you ever notice, and most of my healthcare providers will note this as well, as the patients that come in not knowing much about much, you know, very aloof to the process and just kind of letting go, like kind of like, you know, not controlling anything. They typically have the easiest births, maybe a couple hours, and they didn't come in expecting much except to have a healthy, happy baby, and they trusted the process even if they didn't know they did. I'm losing the sunlight early. I tried to see if I can move things around, but aren't we all losing the sunlight early? Hashtag grateful for the sun. We kind of touched on what I did wrong as a healthcare professional, as a very well informed, and so not relinquish that control. So that art of allowing, that letting go part. So once you put it out there, once you do your birth intention, of course, and again, birth intention versus birth plan. So once you do your birth intention, like any other goal, like any other desire that you wish to, you know, co-create, when you do that intention, you have to let it go. So you have to let go of control. You have to let go of the execution of how it happens. So you can ask, how is it going to happen? What about the complications? What about my past history of such and such and such? What about, yeah, that's a lot of what about, that's a lot of what ifs, and there are so many. And so the ego wants to know, how is it going to happen with this in front of me, with the five senses, what I can see? And that's the unknown part, is that art of allowing, the unknown factor, which birth is a lot of unknown. So some of the affirmations you could use for that is, I trust my body. I trust my body and my baby. I trust the process of birthing. And so some of those to allow you to release some of that control. We talked about what I did wrong, what I did right, and then again I was saying that I was going to make another video that covers what you can do right. So things you can do to avoid a C-section, or things you can do to go into spontaneous labor, things I've tried firsthand that I know works. And again, there's that factor of the unknown. Did you release the fear? Are you letting go of the process? Are you letting go? And so that's really important, right? I actually set an intention. We talked about that. So birth plan versus birth intention. So I set out what I wanted to see happen. I did a fear releasing program. So I did hypnobirthing as well. And I'm also an instructor for hypnobirthing. So check out my website if you are interested. I do virtual classes as well. Very important to condition the mind, or we call dehypnotize, with some of the previous conditioning and some of the past fears, because that can impact your whole pregnancy and your birth experience and postpartum, right? So you want to definitely address your fears at the door. And hypnobirthing is a great way to do it, to recondition the mind, and to so you have some valuable tools practical tools you can help them use. So I did hypnobirthing. I also did fear releasing exercises and meditations and prayers. So I was able to address my fears. So the most important thing with fears, and that's with anything, with any fear that you have, you want to surface them. So you're going to bring those fears to the surface level how you address them, and that's how you let them go. You have to address it. So bring those fears to the surface. Okay, so whatever emotion you feel, whenever you experience that fear, whatever that emotion is, you want to feel it and get into the moment. Take a couple deep breaths, maybe 3 or 4, you name it, a couple counts. And once you're nice and deep, relaxed, you can address your fears then at that point. So you want to release them. So you can say that this no longer serves me, I choose to believe, or this no longer serves me, I choose to, so you can see it going downstream, the fear going downstream. You can see the fear taking a hot air balloon ride away from you, kind of departing, or parting rather, kind of parting with the fear. So just kind of getting in the feeling of it, and just intentionally releasing it. I did all the mind, body, spirit things, right? So I prepared my body. I ate a balanced diet. I exercised. I did spinning babies. I did stretches. I did walk about 1.5 miles to 2 miles at least 4 times a week. So you just want to get out there, do something. And again, we'll talk about some of the things you can do and how research supports each thing that you're going to do, and how it supports having a natural spontaneous labor or having a vaginal birth. And for the body, I did chiropractic services, I did acupuncture, I did Reiki healing, I did so many things. I also did the natural treatment therapies that we know, the dates, you name it, primrose. I'll talk about all that, and the clary sage, everything I tried, and how I went to spontaneous labor. I'm a water broke at home. And so there's so many different things. There's more to cover regarding what I did right. But again, I want to save that for another time. So let's get to my birth story, because we talked about what I did wrong, and how my birth experience ended the way it did. Even though I did all those things right, I did not let go of control and let go of the entrusted process. I said I did, but I really didn't. And the thing that you fear the most will happen, right? It may not happen right away, but it will happen. And just take a note of some things that you fear. Just be more mindful, right? That's what this channel's about too. Just be more mindful with your living, mindful with your thoughts, mindful with your beliefs. Do your beliefs serve you? If they don't, choose a new belief. My birth story is as follows, and I got a lot of questions. Did you get an epidural? C-section versus vaginal birth? What the whole heck happened? And so this is my story, and I will just kind of be quick with what happened and how it transpired, because I think the heart of the message was, when you're creating anything and you desire anything, once you set the intention, you make it plain, you write it down, you become worthy of it, and you let it go. But you have to do the letting go part. That detaching from the outcome is going to be key to getting it done. And so that was what I did wrong. And so my birth is as follows. I did everything right leading to the day of my birth. And so I was 39 weeks and 5 days. And it was around 10 p.m. at night, and my water broke spontaneously. And that's what I wanted, but it broke, and labor started about an hour after. So I started having some mild contractions, or, cramping. I think even right before that, that day I had an acupuncture session, and that just helps to spontaneously induce labor. There's some also labor-inducing massages you can get as well. I tried everything. I stayed home for 24 hours, kind of having those mild to moderate surges. And if anybody's had birth, those still count. So they were still painful to me. But my hypnobirthing and all of my classes did help some to alleviate some of the perception of pain. So I was really happy about that. I had a doula, and she was amazing. And I'm going to put her contact information below, because she is amazing, and I would highly recommend her for anybody who's in Southern California, if you're in proximity to her care services. And if you can't book her, then I would highly recommend getting a doula. Even if your plan is to birth in a hospital setting, I would still recommend a doula. Cases where you can't afford a doula, or the doula is out of the question, or out of proximity to where you live, we also have a healthcare app, a mobile healthcare app that helps kind of mimic a doula service, where it's a birth assistant app, where you can get little different moves and maneuvers and positions that can educate your support person on how to best support you. So I said all that to say I had a doula. Again, remember I did all the things. So I did everything right. The only thing I did wrong, we talked about already. 24 hours of laboring. I got to the birth center. I think I went there midway to check in, and I was 4 centimeters, nicely effaced as well. And some of the methods I was taking since 36 weeks really helped to kind of catapult my labor and kind of assist me in ripening my cervix and that kind of thing, and getting me dilated more than I was in the office, like about 0.5, right? So like fingertip, really my cervix was kind of closed, really, if you want to just say that. So closed cervix, like 2 weeks before, and then I did all those methods that we're going to talk about in another video. And so I had a favorable cervix as a result. So I would say those methods do work, and so I would highly recommend that. And then, so I got there, did midway point, check in at the birth center, and I was 4 centimeters. And then I went back home to continue laboring, and I took some sleep aids. That's kind of common in the birth center. We don't do narcotics or anything like that. So I did a sleep aid to help relax and just to kind of preserve my energy, which I was going to need later, and we'll talk about that. I was approaching my 24 hours of laboring in early labor at home with my water broken. Okay, so no signs of infection. Of course, I'm checking all those things at home, my temperature, making sure I'm checking the fluid, that it's not turning, to any other color, that it doesn't have an odor. So many different things that you can do while you're at home. Make sure baby's moving around to ensure its safety and well-being while you're at home. So again, talk to your provider, but that's typically an okay thing to request if you're going to give birth in a birth center, but check with your provider if you're giving birth somewhere else. So I'm heading back to the birth center, and again, this is where my surges have really intensified, and I'm like so exhausted at this point. 24 hours of early labor. So I'm done. If you can imagine, I'm doing everything, all the things. And so I get back to the birth center, and I'm still 4 centimeters, still favorable, but I'm still 4 centimeters. So all of my planning to give birth at a birth center was thrown out the window. So this is where that trust in the process and kind of letting go of control, letting go of, and being fluid with your, and flexible, and going with the like water, and being like, easy about your plan again, or your intention versus your plan. So I was still 4 centimeters, 24 hours later, early labor. I'm exhausted. I'm in so much pain. And so I have to go to the hospital. So my perfect plan, intention was just shattered before me. But instead of taking that and being open and trusting the process, I kind of kept on holding on to my dream and plan. And, so I was a little stubborn Taurus. And so, long story short, I got to the hospital and I took IV sedation. So that was really nice as well. I'm usually the one giving it to the patients, and I was able to enjoy a dose myself. I accepted the IV sedation, IV start. I got fluids in, obviously, because I was like, I'm sure dehydrated by that point, 24 hours, water broken, not taking in as much as I could have. And then, so I accepted everything. So I did tell myself when I got to the hospital, my plan was out the window. So I still had the feeling of it, but I wasn't resisting any care. Like, definitely you don't want to do that. You want to like go with the flow. You still have your desires, and if you have any special requests for the birth, etc. But be open. Like, I wouldn't get there avoiding fluids and that kind of thing, especially after 24 hours. So that I didn't. I was very open to everything. So I took a dose of IV sedation, and then I was like, well, I know I've been ruptured for 24 hours, but I still want to know what my cervix is doing before anything, because I'm exhausted by that point. I don't know how I'm going to make it, guys. So much pain. The IV sedation barely touched me, by the way. So didn't even take the edge off, like I used to tell my patients. This is going to take the edge off, and it didn't. So anyway, didn't take the edge off. And so I called the doctor and I said, hey, I know I want to minimize the exams, my cervical exams, but I really want to know what my cervix is doing so I could see what my next step is, because I'm not going to make it. It's been over 24 hours. I think I was going on 30 hours by that point. at the hospital. And so she checked me and I was 7 centimeters. 7 centimeters, very favorable. I was 100% face and I was zero station. But at the birth center, she said her baby was really high and the position was off. So I think she was at that time, baby was OP or, so facing sunny side up. For those who don't know what OP is, the baby was kind of not in the optimum position, and which would explain me being stuck at number 4 and or 4 centimeters and not dilating further, and all the early labor because it can prolong labor too, right? So anyway, long story short, without getting into medical, I said, you know what? I'm only 7 centimeters. I'm done. Give me the epidural. so I know I said, midwifery models, kind of low cost effective, low interventions, and that kind of thing. But when my birth plan or intention was transferred out of the birth center, anything goes. Okay. I'm done. I was done. It's like, well, how am I going to get to 10 centimeters and pushing if it's 30 hours and I'm only 7. It's my first baby. I can't. so if you check out my healthcare app too, we're not against epidural. So there's even an section on the app where there's epidural affirmations, which I love to use. They're really helpful. And it's so your support person can kind of get you to that next stage. So when you're ready for the epidural, and we're not against epidurals really. We just want you to in order to ensure or promote having a vaginal birth and kind of decreasing your risk for C-section, we advise you to kind of just wait until you're in active labor. Some hospitals used to, kind of restrict an epidural until you were 3-4 centimeters. But if you're getting it at close centimeters, it still works for some people. We're not saying that it doesn't. And some people it delays their birth process, and some people, you're not able to move, you're immobile. So my recommendation would be waiting until you're in active labor, if you can, 6 centimeters, and that way it aids your birth and not prolongs it. And so, especially if it's your first baby. If it's your second, get it whenever the hell you want. Anyway, that's my take on it. Anyway, so I was 7 centimeters, so I was optimum number of centimeters to get it. If I was going to recommend it to anybody, I would say get the epidural at 7 centimeters if you're going to do it. If you're not at the birth center, of course, where you have options. And there was no nitrous at this hospital. At the birth center, I was going to be able to have nitrous and get in the water. And of course, the hospital, you can't get in the water. You can't. There's no nitrous. So the plans, again, out the window. And especially when it's kind of skewed with all those hours. I barely felt 7 centimeters too. I was like, oh my God, I probably could have done this if I didn't, have a 30-hour, labor at home where I'm just kaput and like done. Anyway, I did the healing work already and I released it with love. So I accepted my birth experience. But anyway, long story short, I got the epidural. Literally, to make a long story short, we're done. Here, I labored for 50 hours. So my labor and birth was 50 hours total. So I didn't get to birth until 50 hours later. So Aiden was born and I pushed for 5 hours. Okay, guys, not kidding. And he was birthed in the direct OP, so occiput posterior. So he was facing sunny side up, direct sunny side up. Okay, for first time baby. And so I pushed for 5 hours. And I think it was 6 hours because I saw a nurse and she's like, oh my God, you're the patient that pushed for 6 hours. And I'm like, was that what the note says? Because they told me 5. Anyway, time's a blur when you're in doing all this anyway. But so that's my birth story. If for those who want to know, did the midwife get an epidural? Did she do birth center? Did she do, hospital? Did you get an epidural? Did you not? And how was the birth? So that was my birth story, 50 hours long, and I pushed for 5 hours. So, but I did it. They offered me a vacuum, offered me a C-section, and I was like, I can do this. And so there's some things I did in labor too to help while I was pushing, to help give me energy, like doing agave and honey, directly in my mouth. My doula was helping with a lot of things. So there's a lot of support you can get, that ongoing support. And the next video we'll talk about, or one of the videos we'll talk about, how to increase your chances of having a vaginal birth and preventing a C-section, even if you have an epidural. So it's not the epidural, it's going to be some other things that prep you. So what you do prenatally, did you do your exercise? Did you do spinning babies? Did you take some of those other methods that made your cervix favorable, etc.? Anyway, but I just wanted to let you know that you can do it too. I pushed out a direct OP baby for my first baby, you can do it too. So I hope that helps someone. That's my birth story, and I had to do like 2 weeks, not kidding, postpartum of healing, and just kind of like, what, why me, and how did this happen, and I planned this whole thing, and so I was just kind of, it was clear to me that I didn't trust the process, even though I said I did. I knew too much, and I wanted to control every aspect of the birth, and so totally took its own turn, and that's what birthing does, and that's what motherhood does. And so and so yeah, it's so sweet now. Aiden is so sweet and totally worth it. And put comments below, like, if you use new methods that helped you go into spontaneous labor, and what was your birth story like, and did you do the healing work after. That is it for our video. Be sure to comment and like and subscribe. We have a lot more to tell, so much to cover with my own personal experience of pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. So many hacks, so many ways to thrive. So many ways to thrive. And I can't wait to see you there. Hopefully videos every week, and I'll see you there. Missy.